Good day and thank you for joining CivilNet. My guest today is Marine Manucharyan. She's a board member of the Civil Contract political party, one of the oppositional parties working in Armenia today. Thank you, Marina, for joining us today. And whatever happened starting the 17th of July until the 31st was surprising for Armenia, alarming in a way. However, the process that's going on afterwards is as alarming or as ununderstandable as the developments before that. So I wanted to ask you at first, where's the opposition and what's the opposition's stance generally and particularly your parties, knowing that Nikol Pashinyan had a role to play in the first days of the developments of the siege and things took a turn later on?
Well, I think first of all, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. I think whatever happened in Armenia mid-July and towards the end of it, it wasn't something unexpected, but it was sort of a wake-up call for the public and for the government as such. Why is a wake-up call? Because since back in like 1999, when we had the October 27 case of attack on the parliament, we never had the situation with hostages and with violence and guns involved. So I think that in this case, it was a significant process. And what lessons we learned, I think we're still in the process of learning those lessons as public and as opposition field and as government as such. For our political party, Civil Contract, and one of its leaders, Nikol Pashinyan, during this process, we've been engaged because it was impossible to stand on the side, first of all, because as citizens and also as a political force, we were supposed to be there, and we were there. However, in the beginning of the process, Nikol Pashinyan, because he's a member of the Armenian parliament, was engaged on his personal capacity as well, because that is his mandate, and people vote for parliamentary members to actually take actions during such situations, and that's what he was doing. It was going to the custodies, he was going to the hospitals, going after the cases and trying to prevent violence. And then afterwards, when the process came to the understanding that in certain moment, the Sassna Dzrer, the group that did this action, called for the resignation of Sir Sargsyan, it was in one of our principles that we will stand next to any political force which demands the resignation. So we did try to come in as a team, we did try to come in as a political party with political ideas, because after all, no matter what violent process is there should be a political aftermath of that, and that's what we were trying to do. What happened next, I think you're very well aware of it. We were kind of accused in hijacking the process and trying to keep it peaceful. So we did step aside as a political party. We were not in a hurry to take over a process which we did not start. And we've been just trying to prevent violence in the
So the confusion over whether or not Sir Sargsyan's resignation was on top of the demands or wasn't, because it seemed to have changed places or there seemed to have been a lot of misunderstanding or misinterpretation around this demand, is what kept the civil contract away from the process after the second week.
Yes, we've been standing on our principles from the day one. So we've always promised that we're not going to take people to another frustration. We're not going to take people through a process which will bring to losing another political process. So, and then at some point, the messages were mixed. I don't know if it was miscommunication. I cannot judge now. But supposedly the demand of the resignation of the president was taken off the table. And then there was a negotiation going on whether Girar Sefilyan is supposed to meet with Sir Sargsyan. And this is a process which we as a party didn't find our place, and we didn't want to be involved in it as well, because that's, again, was not our process.
On the front of the opposition in Armenia currently, is there any kind of change, any kind of consolidation? Because like Sassna Dzrer group, the whole movement was based on the hope of people consolidating. However, they didn't seem to be any bets on the opposition consolidating on a political level. However, despite of what Sassna Dzrer wanted. Did it happen, a political consolidation of the opposition forces in Armenia? Is there any prospect of that happening?
I would rather question whether the political situation in the country changed towards the good or towards the bad, because the fact that the opposition field was mostly empty or was very idle in a way from the political processes was clear from the beginning, I mean from the past times as well, like last year at least. So I would say that it did change towards good and towards bad at the same time. Towards good, it changed because it showed, at least I believe in that the violence is not a way out. And I believe that nonviolence resistance and change in the country should be done through nonviolent resistance. And because of this kind of actions, actually some of the methods of the civic disobedience or trying to bring any change to the country, these things are devaluating themselves. So people stop believing into even a violent way of changing, let alone the peaceful ways of changing. Like I could bring an example of Martin Luther King's movement in America. I would say that our position is more like Dr. King's rather than the Carmichael who was with the Black Panthers and trying to do more of a violent change. So I would rather say that it was the negative part of the whole process. On the positive note, I think some of the part of the population, at least judging from the social networks and from the reaction, people start coming to understanding that there should be a political organized force in the place to actually bring change. Because today, believing in not believing into change through the elections or not believing into the change through hardworking institutional opposition, it's the same as believing into the Republican Party. So we need to actually roll up our sleeves and create this opposition force.
But wasn't there also the opposite effect where people so clearly, as parliamentarians mandated, cannot do much, as was the situation very clearly. So did it also break, trust in the opposition or in the electoral system altogether? I don't mean the voting as such, as to whoever is voted into parliament might not be able to bring about change no matter how hard they try.
I think the problem here is to not, like all the process here, it's not easy to judge from what was happening in the July, because we had an extraordinary situation. We had people with guns on one side, we had people supporting the people with guns on the other hand. So some political parties politicians were trying to kind of do as much as they could to soften the situation, make sure there is no bloodshed that happens in the country as such. But the thing is that overall, it showed vividly that there is a need of an opposition strong force, because let's say if you look at the texts of the people of coming from the rallies, this is not the political texts that are coming there. I mean, it was a lot of patriotism, a lot of anger, a lot of hate speech. And somebody has to speak up about these things. And our party was trying to do it and trying to actually explain to the public that with the violence, with call for violence against police or call for violence on the streets or justifying the process as such, it's not going to help the country in the long run. I mean, let alone we all understand that this regime has to leave, but we all also need to understand that we have to create a viable alternative to this regime. Otherwise, they are strong. I mean, we've wasted, let's say, a month on this process, and aftermath of this process takes another month or two because of the court cases, because of the situation with the people that are in the custody now as an aftermath. So we have April coming up, 2017, which is the election time, and we do have very short period of time to consolidate the forces of the opposition against the regime, which is very established, which has a lot of resources, which has a lot of human resources, financial resources to conduct another rigged elections. So if we believe that this is the way to go, then I think Armenia has a very, very big evaluation to do in this sense. But if we don't believe in it, then we have to start working from day one, I mean from today, if not
Well, isn't today already a little bit too late, given that there's nothing basically left until April? So to consolidate a force, a unity powerful enough to counter a government that's proven itself to be relentless, do you think that's
it's
late
actually and not late the same way? I mean, because it's a small country. It doesn't take much, it doesn't take many to change it. But the thing is that if we look at the even post-Sassna Dzrer process, I've seen, like, what does opposition need today? Like, what our political party, for example, needs today? It needs human resources, it needs financial resources. Very few people question how can a small political party bring a huge change in this country when there is no resources. I mean, we do not want to sell out to oligarchs, to commodity-based cartels. We don't want to take dirty money. So we have to go and ask around to the public, to people. But people have to have the understanding, the political maturity to support financially to a process. I was watching at the support that was coming also from diaspora during this time. In one night, they were able to collect around $30,000 for one family support. Whereas with that amount of money, we can have almost all the voting stations covered with observers, with their training, with policies that should be developed, and that people have to understand that if the silent majority in this country does not vote or goes and gets the bribes and votes for the ruling party because they know how to live with this regime, but they don't know what is coming next if they vote for another party. So we want to really provide this alternative for them to go for it.
The political will is there,
yes,
and the resource is there. What's the missing link?
The resource is there. I think it's the understanding. It's the understanding of the fact that in this country, things need to be changed politically. They should not be changed based on emotion. They should not be changed based on just patriotic feelings. Everybody knows things are bad. Everybody knows who is the reason for these things to be bad. And it's not one person, it's a system. And everybody knows that there is no similar system created on the side so that people will see the actual choice. Armenian public was not put in front of a clear choice for the past at least 15 years. I mean, it was always based on against something rather than for something. So to create this for something, we have to work from, I mean, we're kind of late a bit, but it's okay, we still have time. There is nothing apocalyptic happening in this country, that there are other countries that are in much worse situation than we are. So we just have to be really pragmatic. We need to collect the resources of diaspora, human and financial. We need to do the same in Armenia, and we need to build up a force, one opposition party that can actually win elections, because that is only one way to measure the legitimacy of anyone to actually bring change to this country. And what our party was doing during the Sassna Dzrer siege process, we were saying, come to the stage, 500,000 people, show with your physical presence that you give legitimacy to this process, and we go for Sargsyan's resignation. That's what we were suggesting. But people, of course, are on emotions. A lot of frustration is in the country. So it was a very tense time to actually understand what we want. But I hope that with the messages sending through the time that we're evaluating this process, we might be able to bring this understanding to public.
So with the referendum last year and the elections that are coming up being quite crucial at this point, or could be devastating as well, it can go both ways. To win in the upcoming elections, what's the long-term, for an oppositional political party, what's the long-term gain from that? What does it mean to win at the upcoming political parliamentary elections?
For us is, I mean, I don't want to speak numbers with the parliamentary elections, but I would say that for us, in the long run, we are a young political party. We work with our expectations as well, because we also understand that we're not going to bring change overnight in this country, because again, based on a lot of arguments that I've brought already during the talk, but we need to become an establishment. We need to become an established political party with its policies, with its experts, with its human resource, with its institutional strength and political say in the field. So for this, of course, we don't say that we're going to smash everything and in 2017 Armenia is going to wake up in a new country. But we say that we need to, all of us, invest in this process, because yet again, I'm saying we have on one side Armenian Republican Party, which has around 500 million dram in their budget, whereas a political party doesn't even have a few million dram in their budget, and is struggling even, with that resources, let alone to fight against this, like David against Goliath. But in the long run, I'm a very optimistic person, and it's based on actually very big pragmatism in a sense, because things don't happen overnight. It should be done through hard work, through people that actually understand that this country is not going anywhere but towards the change, and it should be going with the power of the people and with the legitimacy that the people give to these political parties. It should not happen just because we're not happy, or this regime should go, or let's kill everyone, or let's kill each other. It should not be like that, because we cannot afford to think like that. It's a small country.
You mentioned human resources as well. So and to come to the subject of observers during the elections, could you remind us what are the estimations? How many observers would more or less secure minimal electoral fraud?
Well, we have 2,000 voting stations, more or less, 1997 or 2000, and we say that we need to have at least 3 representatives on each voting station, which makes it 6,000 people, and that's why we have our project v6000.am website, where people can register themselves as observers, as proxies, and as media representatives. This will allow, why 3 people? This will allow them to actually not only follow the electoral process, make sure that the ballots casts are kept the way they are, but also collect all the hard evidence showing that whether we've been elected or we're not elected, or whether the elections were clean and transparent, or they were not. Because if we don't have evidence, we also do not have any way to measure our own legitimacy. 6,000 we say, but we also, of course, it's possible to do with less people. But again, if a political party, if an opposition field itself cannot gather 6,000 people, then what kind of change these parties or political system can talk about? So if that means people don't want this change if we're not joining in. So I think that's the wake-up call that maybe the July 17 events were as well, because it was a wake-up call for all of us to actually get up and do something, because the system will continue the way it is. It is going to be as strong and as violent. Okay. There is nothing new there.
Thank you very much, and fingers crossed for the next elections to be fair. And we thank the viewers for joining us as well.